worldwide company that is the person responsible for conducting the remediation. That's a key term. They're the ones who are responsible. In order to make sure that we had a complete delineation of what their responsibilities are and what the city is willing to do to help them along in their efforts to investigate fully and to provide a remedy for the contamination on the site, we entered into what's known as an environmental obligations and indemnity agreement. Basically, two purposes. One is to make sure that we've defined what their obligations are, and to be indemnified in the event there are damages to others as a result of the actions or inactions or inappropriate remediation or inappropriate investigation conducted by Rio Tinto. So that was one of the hallmarks that took place. Secondly, the activities that would be involved in the investigation and the remediation of the site are ones that need to be painstakingly coordinated and reviewed with the party responsible, Rio Tinto, and on behalf of the city of Millville. And we've done that. Why is that important? Because it's important that Rio Tinto understands that we're watching, we know what we're doing, we make suggestions to them, we make corrections to them. They have to apply for permits at the New Jersey DEP. We've helped them out because sometimes they have not been as accurate as they should be. But all of which has resulted in the respect that Rio Tinto has for the work that we're doing on behalf of the city and their realization that we're watching. This is good. And I'm happy with the progress that we made in that regards as well. Now, I mentioned permitting. The next action that's going to take place in remediating the site still has not fully permitted, but assuming the permits are fully in place at the time, it is currently Rio Tinto's goal to start the dredging of Ada Pond. Ada Pond is that pond that is towards the back end of the property as you're looking at it from Wheaton Avenue. It's a pretty big lake. It's about 2 acres in area. And that has to be dredged, and there will be a lot of dredging that'll take place. One of the technical issues that we still have is how deep they have to go. I've been pushing them because they really haven't come up with a way yet, according to me, according to at least my review, as to being able to delineate how deep they have to go. The dredging will go on for quite some time, and the process of drying the sludge that they're going to remove has not been really decided upon. I think that they need to go through a machine which is for drying materials. They think they may put it in the sun. We don't know yet. We'll see. But be aware that at the end of September, there's going to be a lot of activity. Now, in order to prepare for that, the folks at Rio Tinto have been in touch with engineering, and engineering is making arrangements for certain access to certain areas that Rio Tinto needs to gain access to in order to do the dredging. And they're proceeding with that, helping Rio Tinto out. Now, in preparation for this dredging, it turns out that there are some electrical lines that have to be moved. And there are electrical lines that service a number of customers. And the city is working with Deerfield Electric in trying to figure out exactly what poles and what lines control what customers and where the move is going to take place. By the end of this week, I should have a pretty good drawing of where the poles are going to be relocated, and hopefully that'll be in areas that Rio Tinto has no problem with. Rio Tinto will pay for your out-of-pockets on whatever you need to do with Deerfield and others to get those lines relocated. It's something that they're responsible for. Please be aware as well that as a result of past instances in which Rio Tinto has been on the property for other areas of either investigation or remediation, they've noticed that suddenly people run around and who knows what they're up to. So they are going to hire a security team, and everybody should be aware that there will be a security team out there for Rio Tinto at Rio Tinto's expense, which will be for the purposes of making sure that nothing untoward happens and that nothing is stolen. They have a lot of supplies out there as well. And again, they will be paying for that. Those are the main events of what is going to happen. I view my role in that, for that site, as diminishing over time. We've gotten a good relationship, not only from lawyer to lawyer, but from party to party, where I know the mayor and Lynn has been in touch with Fraser Thompson and a few other folks over at Rio Tinto. And while I think I wasn't involved at the time, but I was told that they came here and they were like the big brother who's going to tell everybody how to do things. They've simmered down now, and they realize we know what we're doing, and we have a very good working relationship. And I'm pleased with that. Please be aware as well that in the spring there was a conclusion of work on the Shepherd Bus property. The Shepherd Bus property is the property that's located a bit to the north of the Wheaton, traditionally the Wheaton site, but was contaminated also as a result of some of the material that flowed through from Wheaton. And that cleanup really involved removing some material and creating a better flow for a stream that, for the most part, many months of the year is dry, but sometimes there is some water flow. And it flows underneath Wheaton Avenue into the property on the east side of Wheaton Avenue. If you have any questions about that particular site, please fire away.
I just have one question. So when with the Deerfield contract, I guess the city will pay them, and then we'll submit the invoices, Marcy? I guess that would be to get the money back? Rio Tinto. Right?
Yeah, it
So
would be within, I think, the best business practice for the city to pay and to send me the bills.
Send them to you.
And then I'll send them to Lauren Piano, who's the attorney for Rio Tinto. I think that'd be a good idea. Right.
So
Can I make a suggestion? And I don't know how it may interfere with the usual billing process that takes place with it from Deerfield to the city, but it would be my suggestion that you ask Deerfield to set up a separate file for that, just a separate folio. Good.
So it'll be okay. So it'll be easy to keep it straight. Okay.
They haven't done any work yet other than to go out on the property and look.
Yeah, I think, Joe, you've been out there.
Yeah, I met with
Yeah,
Deerfield.
you've been out there. I know that Wayne's been out there.
I just want to make sure it doesn't fall through the cracks so we get the money back. That's all.
From.
It's another day.
Yeah.
That's an improvement, correct?
Yeah, we own
We own the
property.
building, and we have a contract with Deerfield Electric.
And then you would reimburse the bond with the money we get back. Pay off the bond. Goes back. Go back. Okay.
One other request that I forgot to mention is the following. We've gotten a good baseline set up now with Rio Tinto, and there's a lot of just practical things that I've been doing, really coordination, and a lot of that can be done by someone in the City of Millville's offices in the event that they have somebody available to do that. Now, it's my understanding that some person was brought on recently in the engineer's office, and probably that person has no time already. But in the event that person has some time, that might not be a bad idea.
What coordination activity, what activities of coordinating are you talking about?
I'm talking about making sure that the access way has been paved, has been prepared, and ready for the folks coming in from Rio Tinto, knowing when the Rio Tinto people will be here so they can alert you and the police department of when Rio Tinto will be here. Sometimes Rio Tinto may need some extra attention of a practical nature, and they need to have somebody who they can talk to. I've been in that role, and it's something that someone can do perfectly as well as I can.
Well, I'll get you the name and number of that person that they can contact.
Great. Appreciate it. Anyone else have any questions? Okay. The second item is the airport. This is a complex site which currently is under a common defense agreement. What's a common defense agreement? When you have a number of potentially responsible parties that over the course of a long period of time have a degree of responsibility, you'd like to have everybody acting together more efficiently. It means more efficiency. And in order to do so, you have to have a common defense agreement so that everybody understands what the pool rules are. The pool rules are, we will work together commonly on X, Y, Z, but not commonly on Y, and we will pool our efforts. We have our meetings. We have our way of deciding things. So that's what's known as a common defense agreement. Well, we have a common defense agreement. Under the common defense agreement, the city of Millville, before I got involved, agreed, starting in October of 2016, to pay 15%. Why 15%? It's a part of the negotiation that took place. Why is Millville paying anything at all? Millville is the owner of the property. An owner of the property, no matter what it did or what it didn't do, is responsible, is a person responsible for investigation and for conducting the remediation. And to get it at 15%, I think was a very good job by whoever did it years ago. It could have been more, it could have been less, but I've been always very, very comfortable about that. Now, under the Common Defense Agreement, the group has hired GEI consultants. GEI consultants are a group out of Mount Laurel. I know them well. I've worked with them in other sites. They're very good at what they do. And they get paid, of course, by the group after it gets its money from the various participants. GEI has been on the site for a number of years. They've now come forward with a new scope of work. The new scope of work is to carry them for the next 18 months. And the new scope of work, of course, is to be provided to comment to all of the participants in the group. That's where we are now. I've already commented on it, and we're waiting to have other comments come in. Nobody else has made any comments. I've sent another email out to Kathy Stetzer, who's the LSRP, which I'll tell you about in a minute, to make sure that she sets a date so we can get moving on this. My job here is to keep this thing moving. It has to, there's a lot that has to be done, and not much has been done so far. Why do I say that? Because the whole site, there are hundreds of wells there, and the whole site has had a site-wide groundwater monitoring well event in 2009 and in 2013. That's it. there's not enough data to fully understand what is going on in the groundwater. You have to have more data. And that's one of the components of the scope of work, which is out now for comment. The scope of work covers 18 months. I'm trying to get it down to 12 months to move this thing along. I'm trying to get the comments in quicker. There's no reason in the world why we can't move forward on a more rapid basis, especially to go ahead and get, as part of this scope of work, 2 more sample events of all of the wells. That'll give us a much better idea of the data that we need to have before a remedial decision can be made by the LSRP. Now, I mentioned I'll get back to the LSRP. What the heck is an LSRP? An LSRP is a licensed site professional, licensed by the state of New Jersey. As you know, the state of New Jersey ran into problems when it had like 15 or 16,000 sites that were not processed through and were still on the books, and the whole exercise of investigating and remediating contaminated sites was bogged down. So they created something new in the Site Remediation Reform Act. And one of the things that's new is this thing called the LSRP, the Licensed Site Remediation Professional. You have to be licensed by the state. You have to take exams. You are acting as though, as an LSRP, you are the DEP's eyes, and you ultimately have to make a decision as the LSRP to implement a remedy that is protective of the environment and human health. That's what an LSRP does. And after the LSRP makes those decisions and the remedy has been implemented, the LSRP files a document, and it's called an RAO, a Response Action Outcome. And that response action outcome, in this instance, will take a number of years. I'm just trying to move it along quicker. The response action outcome then is an item that remains in the books, and they put it on a shelf, and they say, we have 3 years, the state has 3 years in which to audit that. They can then audit it within that 3-year period and come back and say, wait, whoa, what you did here? No. Pretty good, but there's one spot, one AOC, one area of concern that you missed, or the state has the right within that 3-year period to come back and say, well, wait a minute, there's more that has to be done. So please be aware of that. Now, this site has other components and interests as well. The site is part of the site. Part of the site is an historically designated area. It's under the State Historic Preservation Office, called SHPO. And that's as a result of some applications that were made years ago. The ultimate decision by SHPO of what the area would entail was larger than the city had applied for. But it is what it is. But the application was unclear and really didn't embrace the actual activities of what's called the electroplating building. There's a building there that's known as the electroplating building. It's north of Beacon Avenue. And the electroplating building sits on a lot of contamination. It's something that will probably have to be demolished and the soil underneath of it excavated. And therefore, I will be making an application with the SHPO to remove that electroplating building from the historic area. Now, it just so happens that close to the electroplating building is the Q hangar. Now, the Q hangar is the source of potential contamination as well. I've gone into the Q hangar and inventoried the barrels that are still there, drums that are still there. And there would appear to be, although I didn't test them yet, some materials there that have to be removed by way of a response action. And for that reason, as well as perhaps other reasons which I'm looking into, going to include the Q hangar in the application to reduce the size of the historic zone as well. And that application is waiting for a couple of things. Primarily the conclusion of the GEI consultant's scope of work, which gets into the need to recognize the difficulties with the electroplating building. So that's what's on the horizon. Now, there is another area. Remember I told you about the Common Defense Agreement. The Common Defense Agreement is an agreement which indicates what areas the group gets together on and what areas it doesn't. There's an area that the group doesn't get to agree on, and that's the taxiway pump station. The taxiway pump station goes back to 1944, 43. I have drawings, original drawings, that I was able to get from the Airport Museum. And it used to be an area that took care of sewer concerns from the many participants, our tenants in the airport. That changed. Recently, the Bay Authority has moved the pump station into an area closer to the main airfield. But the effects of the pump station, or the impacts of the pump station, remain. The contamination was much higher years ago. In fact, it was the contamination, I believe, that was one of the events that started the environmental consultants paying particular attention to the airport. But the contamination has gone down quite a bit, and we need to obtain our own LSRP for the moment, because the group says, wait a minute, we're not responsible for this. There were lots of other people, maybe 50, 100, who through years leased various places. And I can tell you that that is an effort that would be a waste of money to chase down all of those individuals or corporations, half of which I'm sure are out of business or God knows where they moved to. So I would rather, and I have recommended that we sit down and negotiate with the group and see what we can come up with as far as some kind of a recommendation. Maybe we'll pay more than 15% on that. I'm not sure, but chasing everybody down is just a task that I don't think you should be doing, and nor do I think I should be doing. So we're going to go hire an LSRP, which will be representing the city of Millville, and we'll get our ducks in line so that the DEP can't say, well, there's no LSRP here. So that's also going to be done. And as I said, the impact from the taxiway pump station has been studied a great deal, and there's plenty of data on that. And the data is good. It's a decreasing trend, and you should be able to, with the LSRP, convince the LSRP that there should be an RAO based upon what's known as a classification exception area. That means that DEP's happy with decreasing trends over time, but they just want to make sure that we keep watching it over time. So another area that we are just getting into is is continuing to make claims against the insurance carriers. Prior counsel had at one time made claims against insurance carriers, and then for a couple of years didn't do anything. So we're making sure that that is one of our tasks, to continue to make claims against the carriers. There had been resolutions in the past when the city obtained some funds from the insurance carriers, and we'll be doing that as well. Must apologize for this annoying phone. I'm going to just shut it off. I think that'd be a good idea. And if you have any questions on the airport and what's going on, please let me know. But the key concepts now is time. I got to try to push this thing along as quickly as possible, because while other people are paying more money, it's not their property. It's something that exists and they have liabilities for, but it's not like it's imminent in terms of what they want to do with it. We can get to it later. And then,
Frank, if you don't mind, what is your timeline for the airport?
oh my gosh, the airport, 2022.
Never mind.
Okay.
I have one question. When do you think GEI will get that scope of work done now? Will that get done before the end of the year, or how long do you think? Because that's holding up the historical preservation component
That's
of it.
correct. I've pushed GEI. I believe that GEI will get their scope of work finalized in a month. That's my hope. And I know that GEI, as I have suggested, has sent out requests now for comments on the GEI recent scope of work. So that's...
And that request goes to the other responsible
That's
parties,
right, exactly.
Because they have the right to comment on
Exactly.
it. Okay.
Like I commented on it. I mean, there are two items that I thought were way too expensive. One of them had to do with drilling 7 more wells. Another one had to do with taking over the operations of the treatment plant for your public drinking water well number 4. I thought that was too expensive. They'll chime in, and we'll eventually probably get together with a phone call and resolve it.
So the main cleanup out there is the wells, and that'll continue for a long time. The wells go on forever and ever, but I guess if we can get them to move on those couple of buildings and get them torn down, they'll fix the soil underneath, and then it should be fairly good to go, correct?
Yeah, it's called source control.
Okay.
You can have groundwater contamination that the state and an LSRP would allow to continue indefinitely. But you have to control the source. You don't qualify for what's called a classification exception area, where there's an area of the groundwater that's accepted out. Theoretically, in 50 years, it'll resolve itself. But you don't qualify for that unless you control the source. The source is in the soil, and it's something that's not already in the groundwater. So it would keep feeding the groundwater as a result of rains, surface water flows, unless you got that source out. So yes, you're right. The effort is going to be to remove soil sources, excavate, and then determine to what extent, how many classification exception areas there are going to be, what they're going to be accepted for, and then there's going to have to be a continuation of responsibility for that into the future. What does that mean? It means that the DEP can require that testing take place every 2 years, just to make sure that it's on a decreasing trend. They're happy if the trend decreases, nature's doing its work, and that's what would have to be done in the future. Now, why do I say the LSRP and the DEP? Remember, I talked about the LSRP having all of this authority, being like the DEP. Not when it comes to the groundwater. The groundwater, the DEP is the one that needs to provide the approvals to what the LSRP wants to do, and that's because the groundwaters are in the trust of the state. We don't own the groundwaters. You may own the property of soil and the buildings above it, but the groundwaters are within the trust of the state, that they're the ones who have to be responsible for making sure that what happens to the groundwaters is going to be an improvement. That comes from an old case in Michigan years ago.
So the goal on your end would be that the ground is cleaned up as much as possible, and then it's just monitoring of the wells until
Absolutely.
the end of time.
Absolutely, and there's lots of areas of discretion that an LSRP has. You know, one LSRP may think X is fine, one LSRP may think Y is fine. I'm constantly pounding for the most protective aspect of a remediation for you that is within the realm of a CEA, because I have to realize that that's the only thing that's going to happen here.
And there's no reason why the other parties that are with us have any inkling to speed up the process, or like they have not as much motivation as us to just get this over and done.
That's correct. That's correct. I mean, we're here. We have a piece of property that is really the gateway to the city, and I know that the city would like to have it redeveloped and to put to some use, and that's our interest.
Well, because how much is left in, like you gave me the figures, there's still a bit of money for the airport.
There's $1 million left.
But you could go through that
Well, my understanding was this could cost $15 million.
for the airport.
I thought what I had heard back when I started.
Well, we spent $7 million so far on the airport from what you had given me. So
I just want to make sure that maybe there was a concentrated effort to slow the process down because of the cost.
So is it, okay, so you're saying it's better to,
Well, I'm not saying it's better, I'm just saying, that's something we need to think about, and, make sure that we have money available if he's going to move forward with this.
but the airport, I mean, there's millions and millions of dollars left out there for us to spend on cleaning up. We've already spent $7 million. I mean,
Well, I think the actual cleanup that's anticipated with your 15% shouldn't be an outlandish sum.
what's that? What's the definition of outlandish?
An outlandish sum. Okay.
My outlandish might be different.
I would think that you'd be looking at 125,000.
Okay. So then we're okay.
No. I'm talking about.
Oh, that was one
He's
part.
adding, he's adding.
That was one. That was 1 year. I mean,
We
I'm
would
not
like you
talking
to
about.
stop there.
I'm not talking about 125,000. You know, for the entire time until 2022. No,
That's
but for the next year, yeah, that's probably for the next year, 18 months, it's probably a good estimate.
Frank, in terms of the claim that the city's making for reimbursement from the insurance companies, are we looking for reimbursement just for attorney's fees, or are we looking for reimbursement of the actual cleanup costs as well?
No, it's the actual cleanup cost.
Okay.
Yeah. And that means we need to get bills from 2011 onward from your departments that have paid those bills. Why do I say 2011? Because that's the last time frame that was involved with a prior effort to get insurance company monies.
So that spreadsheet I had, I guess we'll have to double check that everything's on there and give you the P.
No, I'm going to need individual bills. Okay, individual bills.
But I mean, this will tell us where to look.
Yes,
It's listed on here.
absolutely.
You even know where they're at.
Absolutely.
15.
2011.
So Marcy, that would be that would be the spreadsheet that you made for me.
14 R's we have in this building, and we require 14.
So you would have to, from that spreadsheet, get what's on this list.
Yeah, it's a lot of bills, and it's it. Look, let
It's
me
not
tell you
that many
something.
vendors, though.
How many times have you seen the response from an insurance carrier to a claim? Okay, the response usually is 15 pages of why they don't pay you. Okay? And one of them is always, well, you haven't specified what your damages were. So we have to make that effort in getting the invoices that have not been subject to a prior claim for insurance coverage. It's going to be tough, but we got to make that effort.
Mia? That sounds like a Mia job.
Anything else on that particular site? I have a third to discuss with you. It's located in the shadows of this building on Ware Avenue. It's called Block 461, Lot 1, which the city purchased in 2002. And in 2013 received a grant for a bicycle path and a bird watching house. It's delightful out there. If you haven't been out there, there's a whole slew of wetlands, beautifully growing, and right by the river. So why are we talking about this? The city received sometime in April, I believe it was, a request from an LSRP hired by ARDAG, A-R-D-A-G-H, glass company, that the city should put its approval and signature on a deed notice. What's a deed notice? A deed notice can be lots of things, but in this instance, it's a notice that a portion of the property has been capped. Why was it capped? Because it was used as a landfill. It was known as the Western Landfill of the operations of Saint Gobain, Verialo, which was the North American company that is part of Saint Gobain. It was also part of the Foster Glass Work, and years back, it's known as the Western Landfill. It's contaminated with arsenic, a little bit of benzene, and the cap was put on over a series of years, but finally was finalized in 2010. And the cap was put on after some of the contaminated soils were removed, but most of the contaminated soils remain in place. And the cap is somewhere between 2 and 3 feet in various areas of the material that remains in place. So the top 2 or 3 feet, depending upon the location, is a cap. So what does the deed notice stand for? The deed notice says, hey, all you people who want to buy this property in the future, please be aware that there's still some contamination down there, but an LSRP has approved the cap, and the cap is going to be what it is, and that's something that the city's been asked to sign. There's also groundwater contamination, and the LSRP wants to seek approval from the DEP under one permit for CEAs. I've told the LSRP that, at least to me, the DEP is not going to do that. They're going to want multiple permits because there are multiple property owners involved, and that's turned out to be the case. And I'm now discussing with the LSRP, I think, something that he has missed, and there has to be probably more CEAs than he believes. But we'll get to that later on in time. Why is all of this important? It's important because when the LSRP, who's been on this case for a long time, decided that the cap would be an appropriate remedy, there was no bicycle path. It was in 2010. So what we have is a wonderful bicycle path inviting the public in, and we just want to make sure that the cap is sufficient to be protective of the environment and public health and health. And one way we do that is challenge the LSRP with the self-admitted proposition that he didn't know about the bicycle path until an inspection was made in 2014. And it seems perhaps not to have entered into his equation of what may be protective of. Another...
Just, can you check and say, didn't we drive pilings for that bridge or not?
Oh, yeah.
So how do we not go through the cap? Because I'm sure they're deeper than 3 feet.
I agree with you. I agree with you. You're 100% right. So those are all considerations that have placed this into some degree of importance. Joe, you're 100% right. Additionally, the need exists for there to be. Remember, I mentioned to you in the first matter, the Wheaton Avenue matter, that we had an environmental obligations and indemnity agreement. I cannot stress how important that is now to obtain an environmental obligations and indemnity agreement between the City of Millville and the RDAG group. If they're going to go ahead and claim that there is a remedy, whatever it is, eventually, that's going to be protective of human health, it's our property. We've invited the public on it. We just want to make sure that we're protected. And that's through that type of an agreement that I mentioned, where we have our obligations, they have their obligations, and by the way, if in fact it's not protective, we can look to them for additional contamination remediation or for damages. So,
I hate to interrupt you.
No, that's fine,
They're
Joe.
getting ready to extend that bike path. Is that going through more contaminated land?
Oh,
They're not going that way, though.
it's going to be extended.
No, they're not going through.
Which way are they going?
This
That's
one,
what I'm
but
saying. I'm asking.
they're going up to the river.
They're going up to the river, right?
Yeah,
So,
this one
Well,
is over by Harris property.
Wherever it's going, can you send me a plan? Because I just
Not
want
that
to.
way.
Okay. I just want to make sure it's not going into an area that is contaminated, that remains contaminated. Another concern is that the City of Millville has 4 public drinking water wells that are located north of this bicycle path. I think they're 13, 14, 15, and 16. Those are 4 wells that, while having not been abandoned, are no longer in operation. Okay. In 1997, there was a study done. That's 20 years ago, by the group that was responsible at that time, not RDAG, that concluded that the contamination of arsenic in that western landfill was not a threat to any of the City of Millville community drinking water wells. Now, I don't know whether you have any desire to one day turn those wells on again, but that's not what my main concern is. My main concern is before those wells were shut off, which I think was in 2013, was there any contamination that was observed in those wells of arsenic or benzene? I've asked Mr. Pierce from the water company to dig up the records of testing that took place at an earlier time to see if in fact there has been an impact and that there would be some responsibility for for remediating that, if in fact it happened. Don't know whether it happened. The one other item that I want to note is, what do you call someone who goes upon your property and has no legal right to be there? A trespasser. Okay? For a period of about 12 years, if not more, the folks who were the predecessors to an Ardagh chemical company were on your property doing things to your property since 2002, and they had no permission to do it. Well, they claim they didn't know. Well, that's too bad. There was a deed. Okay? That being the case, you have a very good argument to make that you do not have to sign that deed notice, and that you can require them to do far more. My suggestion is that that is the position that's taken, and ultimately I would consider it a success if I can get them to pay your legal fees, because of the fact that they've been going on your property since 2002 without asking your permission, not having an access agreement, putting in a remediation that you haven't signed off on. It's a bit of a pickle that they've gotten themselves into. Now, the one other item that I want to mention to you is that in 2002, when the city purchased the property, it was supposed to purchase two parcels. So far, I've only found a deed for one of the parcels, so I'm going to look into it and make sure that.
Just make that they paid for both parcels,
right?
But they never transferred the deed.
But I can only find one deed, so I'll do a search and we'll find out. Report back to you. This is what's happened. This is typical environmental case when just an innocuous letter shows up in your bin one day and says, well, sign this deed notice. But when you dig into things, and you must, whenever that happens, you got to dig into things because there's a history, and you just got to make sure that people on the other end are doing the right thing, which is not the case here.
I'm sorry. I just wondered when the last time that they were trespassing on our property was, when that ceased.
Well, the last time would have been around 2014 that I can point to in a report where they admitted they were there. Okay. But they now know. They now know. They now know not to go there until we let them go there. When I came in today, Brock asked me if I would comment upon a document that the city received from the school board.
The city didn't receive it. I think it was something from the school board that I think was
You're talking about the water document?
Yeah.
The water document.
Yeah.
Okay. All I can tell you is that over the last year and a half to 2 years, there has been a recognition nationally that pipes corrode. I mean, we all know that. But, hello, I mean, they guess what? They do corrode. But the focus has now been on schools, and that's because excess lead consumed on a regular basis at young ages can have dramatic impact. And I would, Brock asked me, I would conclude that the most likely cause of that excess lead in those areas that are indicated is because of corrosion in pipes. That's something that's finally gotten the attention that it deserves.
Well, the source, you know what? Dave, it's your department. You can explain.
There also should be some funding available for that from the state. The state has been remiss in not making complete fundings. sometimes not even half of the fundings of its lead remediation pool. But there is money available.
Well, it seems to be in the schools, so it looks like it's going to be a Board of Education problem.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Any other? Good evening, Mr. Ennis,
Good evening.
Commissioner Ennis. How are
Thank
you?
Sir. Doing fine, thank you.
Good. Is there any other question that you may have that I can fire away on and bring you? I think I've pretty well brought you up to date. I appreciate the opportunity.
I did email you the gentleman's contact phone number.
Thank you.
Rio Tinto.
Thank you. Okay.
Probably won't
And
have a phone.
anytime you have any questions, concerns, you know where to call.
Thank you for being clear and concise. Great
Thank-
report.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I misunderstood what you said.
Madam Clerk, are there any review changes to the agenda?
No, Mayor.
We now open up the meeting for public comment on agenda items only. Anyone who would like to address the commission on an agenda item, please step up to the mic, state your name, your address, and your concerns, and limit your comments to 5 minutes, please. Seeing no one, I close the public comment on agenda items only. Old business, Madam Clerk.
All right, we have contract for ambulance service with Inspira, a discussion item. I think Chief Lippincott has something to add.
Chief.
Thank you. Commissioners, I had a conversation with the business administrator, and she recommended that I come to the work session since it would affect the entire city. A couple months ago, we had a representative here from Inspira Health Network discussing a merger that was taking place with Millville Rescue Squad, which you all know has been our longtime provider of emergency medical services in the city. And I will say they've done a great job, and we always have a good relationship with them and the fire department. But it's become clear over the last few weeks that the merger really, it's more like, sounds like more of a takeover by Inspira. I think Inspira is going to be the ones actually calling the shots and driving. And they're the bigger organization, so I think that probably makes sense. My conversation with Regina was there's certain things that the fire department needs from EMS, fire call standbys, training, things like that. Since we're moving away from a more local provider, and now that Inspira is going to be pretty much the provider of our emergency medical services, should we be discussing with them some type of formal agreement as far as what are they going to provide, what do we want as a city to provide emergency medical services? We've always kind of had a handshake agreement with Millville Rescue and insurance that they're going to provide, and like I said, they've provided a great service. But other than an MOU, I think that we have for the 2 ambulances, am I correct, Regina? That's all we have as far as we know, is an MOU when we bought the 2 ambulances for Millville. We've never had a formal agreement that spells out, and these are pretty common, when municipalities use a third party to provide their EMS, they usually have and maybe the solicitor is familiar with that, they'll have a contract that spells out like what the expectations are. What do we want from our EMS provider? What do they want from us? Those type of things. And I thought maybe it's just with that coming down the road. I understand August 1st is the takeover date.
When's our contract up?
So-
Do you remember, Regina? With the
The MOU is
Yeah.
2019. Does that sound correct?
I would think that they would at least come and approach us. I mean, they came to the meeting, they talked about it. Now it sounds like this is going through. Don't you think they should contact us and say, hey, let's sit down and talk about this?
well,
Well, I
for,
would think so, but if they don't, do we want to?
We still have to protect the city if they don't.
Exactly,
that's-
that's what I mean.
that's-
Well, so we need to sit down and at least come up like you're saying, Chief. You're here
Right.
on their behalf, but
Well,
they
not on their behalf.
Well, I
I'm
understand.
here because I have my own vested
well,
concerns.
yeah. Well,
There's certain things that
at
I
this
need-
point, you're talking about everybody.
well, I guess we
Right, I'm
would-
here on two. One, as the fire chief, I mean, I have things that I need from our
Correct.
EMS provider, rehab, fire, standby, but also as a taxpayer, just to make sure that we're
Sure.
going to continue to get the quality EMS service that we've always gotten from Millville Rescue. Let's make sure that's going to continue, and
so we have
without
to,
something in writing, if all of a sudden there's a problem, how do we hold
Correct.
them?
Chief, is there other communities that use Inspira for their EMS services?
No. They,
None.
First
they
time.
currently provide advanced life support through the paramedics. This will be the first BLS, basic life support EMS. That
With
they-
anybody? With any community in New Jersey?
Correct.
So
Chief,
do we
I-
have to know if they'll honor the MOU though till 19? Because if they do, then we're okay.
I mean, at the last, when they
Yeah.
made their presentation, they said they were going to honor all existing contracts and MOUs, but we don't have a contract with them. We have an MOU saying that the city ambulances will be used for city business, but
Correct.
there's nothing that spells out response times.
Your
and
concerns are
quality
broader.
control.
I think maybe if you could provide me a list of those items that you would like to see in an agreement from your standpoint, and maybe I can provide that to Inspira. And
Also concerned about the dollar, because right now, the law allows us to contribute $105,000 over budget for a volunteer.
this is not a volunteer organization, and I think that we wouldn't be able to contribute. I think they probably understand that.
That's what I mean. I think that we all should have to sit down at least with Brock or
Yeah.
somebody else and let's iron it out, see where they're coming from, where we stand, where everybody else stands.
When does this take effect?
I understand August 1st. I have some,
Running out
some of my,
time, aren't we?
some
Yeah.
of my firefighters also work for them part-time for Millville Rescue, and they've been receiving emails this week about they need to get employee orientation for Inspira, drug screens, new uniforms for Inspira. So it's really becoming an Inspira, obviously it's becoming an Inspira operation. So I just thought that since it's moving away from our local rescue squad that we've always had a good relationship with, maybe
Well, I
it
think
becomes
it's-
more of a corporate entity
Yeah.
providing it. Maybe we should have something that
But
spells out.
there should be an agreement, and if it's going to take effect August 1st, I mean, that's 2 weeks from now. So
Absolutely.
I think maybe a list of things that you think are important.
I mean, I know they gave
Get
us
them
assurances
employed.
that nothing was going to change the day they were
No.
here, but that's
You're
just
right.
that's
Get
just a
in writing.
verbal. Hey, we're going to honor everything.
They may be assuming the money, and I'm sure.
Correct.
So
Yeah, we need to have a discussion.
So can
with
we
them
shoot him a
sooner.
letter, Brock?
Yeah. If
And
Mike can get,
absolutely.
Chief can get me his
Absolutely.
concerns.
And I've done a little bit of research. I mean, there's plenty of communities in the area that don't have EMS provided as a municipal service. Bridgeton and Bynum provide it through a municipal service. Fire Department, Bridgeton, the third service in Bynum. But like Atlantic City, they use a private contractor. But then there's a contract that spells out what the city of Atlantic City expects they're going to get. And I just think that
Does Atlantic City use Atlantic Care?
I'm not sure.
Or
who
one of
they're
those
using. Yeah,
agencies
but there's
like-
there's different ones
Yeah.
out there. Atlantic Care does provide both advanced life support and BLS
Yeah.
in a lot of communities. So I just thought it was something. Like I said, wearing two
Great
hats:
point.
taxpayer and fire
Excellent.
chief.
So-
that-
Thank you.
I guess the question is, they don't have a contract with us, so we're not paying them anything. They're just providing it and billing the customer.
What month
Right.
do you pay that 105, Marcy? Is that first of the year, is it middle of the year, or?
They usually start calling me as soon as we got the budget. What I do is I give them 26%, beginning of the year in January, and then the remainder of the money once we got the budget.
So they have everything for 2017?
Right, so I'll
I think the major concern here is that our citizens get service.
sure absolutely.
That's the major concern.
Yeah. Like I said, this all kind of started out with my own, just on the fire part, things that I'll need to continue to get from EMS. And then it kind of involved in my discussion that, it involves the whole community and everything. So instead of me just looking at my own interests, we should probably do it all at once and get everything covered and all that. So I'll send that to you.
There might be something in their incorporation that, when the deal took place, where it spells out that they're honor existing agreements with that they have.
But I guess too,
But
like
we
you.
don't have an agreement.
Well, we haven't,
They were our responder, that's why we were giving them $105,000. There is some, there was a resolution, I think, that we passed.
So they could buy a new bus, I believe it was.
too.
Yeah.
Well, that was an extra
I
300,000.
think,
Right.
I think at
That
one
was extra-
time,
That was extra money we gave them.
I
for
could be
that.
wrong. I think there was either, it might even be an ordinance that named Millville Rescue Squad as the sole provider of EMS in the city, and maybe that's something else that has to be looked at, because if they're not going to be, they're going to be Inspira EMS.
I approached John Rick today when we had the meeting here, when they were here, and he told me that nothing was moving with Millville. Our agreement was still with Millville Rescue Squad. They were just, forming a relationship, they're not being taken over.
Right. And that was what I was told too. But like I said, just seems in the last couple weeks, like I said, it's only anecdotal, but I have multiple employees that have told me like that they're becoming in spirit employees now, part-time.
Have they changed the trucks, the ambulances?
No,
They still say MES?
they still say MRS, correct. But like I said, the one email said that they had to go get fitted for their new Inspira uniforms. So it certainly sounds like
happening.
they're becoming Inspira employees, and I don't know. I don't have all the answers, but I just thought maybe this is the time where maybe we should find out. It's,
Okay.
public safety, you figure it's fire, police, and EMS. We provide our own fire and police, but EMS we've always relied on somebody else, and that might be the most cost-effective way to do it. But we probably ought to have something in place to make sure we're assured that we get whatever services are appropriate. So I just wanted to bring that up.
Thank you, Chief.
I
We
will
appreciate it.
communicate with the attorney and.
Appreciate it. Thank you. All right, we'll go right into discussion of commissioners. Commissioner Davis? Commissioner Sui?
Sure. First, concerning the data transfer, I know the Board of Education assured us that they were going to cooperate. However, we're running into a few snags here. First, they took 2-week vacation, so that delayed the process. Next, now they're on a summer schedule, so apparently they don't work on Friday, which I'm sure our employees would love to have that schedule. SSI, the company we are switching to, has not heard from the Board of Education concerning the transfer of email, which is supposed to occur Thursday. And because the Board of Education is on a summer schedule, we will be a day without email when that occurs. However, the transfer is contingent upon the board removing the domain name, which belongs to the city of Millville, from the Board of Education server. So with the consensus of the commission, I'd like Brock to contact the attorney for the Board of Education and find out what's going on so that doesn't get delayed.
2 days.
What's that?
He's got to fix it in 2 days.
Well, if we don't have to do it next week, we don't do it this week, but, it's a little ridiculous. It's delaying a lot of implementation of software and adding new users, et cetera, which is, costing us time.
Commissioner Sui, the failure to remove the domain name, what specifically does that prevent?
It prevents us apparently from, I can get Mike to translate it from technological terms to English, and then you can transfer it to legalese
Right.
from English to legalese, and they can transfer it back, translate it back. But I'll get Mike to, I believe Mike shot you an email. If you have any questions, you can contact him.
But if no one will have email on Friday, would it be better to do it on a Monday when the board's open too? I'm just saying.
No, because that way, if there's any problems, they can resolve them on the weekend.
Oh, so they need the 2 days on the
They need the 2
weekend.
days to resolve any problems and transfer all the IP addresses on the computers.
Okay.
They say it'll only be a matter of minutes once it's released for them to grab it and have it. The problem is we'll only have access through the web until they
Mo-
go to each
are you saying
individual
none?
computer.
Mike's telling me none, so
So he's saying no email.
Well, if
For-
they don't release it, I think that's where.
that's the problem. So
Once
that's,
they release it, they can get it.
Talk-
Until they release it, we can't get it.
talk to Mike and he'll explain it all.
And then it'll take over the weekend. They'll go to each individual station throughout the city.
So they should release it Thursday for you. And then
Well, they should, but we can't get a hold of them to do it.
Right, so I'm saying, so if Brock can get them, if they release it Thursday,
Yeah.
everything will be fine.
Yeah, SSI's been unsuccessful, and they were working with us for a while. I don't know what's happening now. Somebody's got a day off, and they don't have anybody else doing it, or what. There should be no surprise to anybody that it's happening. So I don't.
Can't imagine not having email for.
Might be nice for not having it for.
Well,
a
it'd be
day.
nice except it's going to be sitting there when you get back, so it's going to
Um,
be twice as much.
And also, on the next subject, we're going to have to make a decision on the Lavoie Theater. Do you have information on that? I guess you want to get to that when you do it, or?
Go ahead, you can start.
Well, I don't have all the information in front of me. I'm just bringing it up because we're going to have to make that decision soon. And other than that, the other stuff can wait for the, except for the engineer's report, it's got a lot to tell us. So come on, Lee.
Thank you, Commissioners, for allowing me to give you my report. We're very busy at the wastewater plant, as I'm sure you all heard, but there was an important event last week. The storm that passed through the city of Millville was labeled as a 1 in 200 year storm by the National Weather Service. We had roughly just under 2.2 inches of rainfall in 24 minutes, which inundated most of our stormwater collection system throughout the city. It also affected the wastewater plant. Our flows increased up to 6.2 million gallons per day. At that rate, it caused backups at the wastewater plant. Ireland Avenue pump station had overflowed. We had to call that into NJDEP, the hotline. We utilized a south aeration tank to hold the increased flows. So it wasn't only through the city; it was in the utilities as well that suffered from the storm. Just to get back into the wastewater plant a little bit, the plant's running fine right now. We have a startup coming up for the ultraviolet disinfection system. Starting next Monday, we'll have a 5-day commissioning period. After that 5 days, we're going to punch list, the system throughout that and put it online permanently, and we'll be getting rid of the pilot UV system that has caused so many problems throughout the city. Just to delve back into the storm event, we did have a report from one of the employees at the wastewater plant. We're trying to determine the exact amount of the infiltration. We had a rate that was reported at 10 MGD. So there's a discrepancy there between the communications and the data collection, what had 6, and a visual observation of 10. 10 is more than 4 times our normal plant flow. So we can't handle that. We also have an EPA report response coming up within the next couple of weeks that asks us how we're going to correct our infiltration inflow problems throughout the city of Millville. Knowing that the Ireland Avenue trunk main is in the White Marsh Stream, it's a natural place to start to look for a way to solve our infiltration system inflows. So we're coming up with a way to try and get out there to either bypass pump and get into that main to check it, or possibly even hiring a contractor to look at it, like video pipe, that kind of service. The problem is we have no access to that trunk line. Something that's been brought up before in past years. We have no road. We have no way to get there. So that's something we have to resolve. We need a method or a means to get to these pipes out in the White Marsh Stream to check them.
Wayne,
I'm
I
confused.
grew up by that, and there was always I've been back there in years at Middle East. There was always a dirt road with the pipe off if I was
side of the
looking
stream.
south, or I'm sorry, if I was looking east, it would be to the right of the stream.
Right.
For probably a couple, however many thousands of feet.
Well, I haven't visited it myself, Commissioner. I'm going based upon reports given to me by the plant personnel. And I know I was at Ireland Avenue pump station during the storm, and there was no way to, access the pipeline from Ireland Avenue.
Well, at least by
across
Rick
the
Avenue
stream.
you can.
Because there's a path next
Yeah,
to the
there's a-
stream.
I'll take you out there.
And there's manhole covers all.
I know
Yeah,
there's
all the way
manhole
down, yeah.
covers. I think the issue is we have no vehicular access.
I think you can probably get back there at least
Well,
part way.
If there is a way, I'd like to see
Yeah,
it.
we'll take a ride out there. We'd go enough places together,
Yeah.
so one more won't hurt.
But anyway, that's something that's coming up. We have to have a response in the EPA shortly. That's just part of the storm. The problem we had. We went around a lot of the areas of the city: White Marsh, Rhonda, Marlin, Pareca Drive. We saw a lot of, flooding and, problem areas that need to be addressed. The engineering's, looking into each of these areas right now, trying to, get into that situations to see how we can try and address these floods. We can't store all the water that comes down in a 24-minute period, but maybe we can do something to address the concentration times to give our system, more of a chance to react, to absorb or displace the water. So we're looking into that right now. I have a map I brought with me of Pareca Drive that just shows the situation that occurred there that I don't think we had really understood prior to this rainstorm. We have a backflow coming out of the pond on Tomasello, draining down Pareca Drive, creating a nuisance on Pareca Drive. So we need to look further into that and see if there's a way to redirect some of that storm flow to stop that, from occurring. White Marsh, we're trying to map the flood areas we observed to see what's going on. There were depressed areas of low gradient where it seemed to me that water had been flowing either backwards or by design into these low areas, coming out of the inlets, flooding the streets. In some instances, there were 24 inches of water, in the streets, back into people's homes and their lots. There were even residents standing on their steps, telling cars to slow down, not to create wakes through the water to flood them out. So it's something we need to look into to see if there's a way to provide some relief for the next storms, which I'm sure are going to be coming. Like I said, there's no way to really stop and control all that water, but at least maybe there's something we could do to help. On Marlin Terrace, there was at least 24 inches of water at the bottom of the hill. That's been an ongoing project. We're trying to obtain easements to finish that pipeline or reroute the pipeline out to the state NJDOT inlets or pipeline. We haven't had much progress. So I've asked engineering to look into another way to maybe help control some of that water runoff. But the best thing to do is to tie it into the twin 24-inch storm drains that go to the lake. So those are the four main areas that we really looked at. I mean, I know on Clover Lane there's issues there. There's a system that's a recharge system. There's one outfall that we haven't been able to locate. It's buried. We have a project designed to create some relief for that, but we just haven't had the manpower and time to implement that.
Brock, the letter was sent out for that last easement, correct?
Yes.
So we just haven't heard back?
Yeah, well, there actually are two property owners that need to sign easements. One indicated that they would. And they said they didn't have the information, so we sent what they needed to sign. I have not gotten that back yet. The other one, we're in a settlement posture with them.
How long do they have to decide?
I think we probably should contact them again if we don't hear. But the ball's in their court at this point.
That's all I had on the storm, commissioners. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to try and answer them. I do have the agenda for the construction project to go through also too. We had our 6th monthly construction meeting today at the wastewater plant. We have the next pay application in for $460,000, which is fair and appropriate. As I started off in the meeting, we're going to be starting up the ultraviolet disinfection system. It'll be a relief to the plant operations and the city to have the pilot system removed that's been there for over 4 years. We only have 4 or 5 more days to run the pilot system, and we're still suffering with nuisance alarms, power drop-offs being reported from the SCADA system, of a UV shutdown for less than a minute time period. So we have our emergency electrical contractor has taken a look at that. The manufacturer's representative is out there looking at it. We're doing everything we can to keep that system up and running and performing through these last days. But it's painstakingly slow to get to the end. We can't wait till that pilot is all flying out of the city. There's been a lot of progress on the South Secondary Clarifier. We had the Ovivo, the manufacturer's representative, on site. And I just want to say, for a matter of record, he said that this is one of the best installations he's seen in years. So he wants to give our contractor a lot of credit for the workmanship and craftsmanship that he's seen on that clarifier. We'll be starting that up towards the end of the month, beginning of August. Tomorrow at 5 a.m. we're installing the grout floor, so it'll be an early day tomorrow. Once the grout floor is done, the next day we're going to paint the mechanical equipment and then start looking at connecting process piping. The solids handling building, all the painting is done in the gravity belt thickener room, the belt filter press room. They did the painting today, 2 coats of epoxy paint in there. The rotary press room, that's all painted. The next room to paint is the maintenance bay where the mechanics work. Operations is moving all their equipment out to allow the painter's room to work in there. So there's been a lot of progress at the wastewater plant. We're looking at presenting to the commission the South primary clarifier for approval and inclusion in the contract. The contractor was able to shave roughly $15,000 off the cost in an effort to help us to be able to move forward with that and stay within the original bond amounts. Now that I have the firm numbers, I could come meet with you, Marcy, and and go over those numbers. We have some ballpark estimates on work to be done to seal the leaking wet well. We have the worst case scenario, which is around $109,000. We're hoping it'll be done at a lot less than that once we get into it. So, once I have those numbers, I would like to be able to recommend to the commission that we, include that next primary clarifier for replacement. Then all 4 tanks would be done and be good for the next 25 years. That's all I had on the wastewater project. If you have any questions, Brian's not here. I'd be happy to try and bring you up to speed or any information I have on his projects, but he couldn't make the meeting today.
Any questions? Oh,
Yeah.
thank you, Wayne.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Yeah.
Well, I have one more thing here, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead.
Give you an update on the camera systems. The bid specs have been prepared for the stuff that won't be seen. So we'll be getting quotes to see where they're coming in at. Hopefully they'll come under the bid requirements. And we've been having trouble getting Atlantic City Electric to respond for our request to repair or replace cameras on the poles. So I've instructed my staff to contact the Board of Public Utilities. In the meantime, if any of you guys have any contacts over there, it would be greatly appreciated if they would answer a question. Progress.
How many lights on the poles that we need repair?
Well, it's not the lights, it's the cameras.
But
We have
Cameras on?
cameras out there, but we
You're
want,
not allowed to do anything because they're on the poles.
well, we're not sure about that. I mean, we told we can't, we told we can't, we told we can, so when we contact the Board of Public Utilities, I guess we'll find out.
Okay.
The other question with that is there's also a monitoring service available, which we'll have to decide when the time comes if we wish to utilize that. With the fixed camera systems, they're fixed to a pole, they're still, rotate whatever. It's also there's also a monitoring company that has software that will look for certain parameters. Say you have 5 or more people going down an alley. The computer can monitor that, can notify their people, and then their people can notify the police department. They monitor 24/7. So we're going to get the price on that as well as just DVR capability. I don't know, I consider it kind of like maybe a force multiplier, you know what I mean, where you won't have to have a cop riding around. Not that you wouldn't have a cop patrolling anyway, but you'd be able to do that with a camera to help the police department out. But of course, there's going to be a cost associated with that.
Sure.
We're working on finding out what that exactly is.
Anything else?
Yeah, I had asked for, and I'm looking for the email right now, it almost slipped my mind. If it wasn't too late, I believe I sent it on Wednesday to request to advertise for a bid for something. Be authorized to advertise for bids or something, and it wasn't added. I knew it was a late agenda session, so I was just curious as to why that couldn't be added, if anybody can answer that question.
Yeah. I asked for a date for the bid opening, but they could be added without the date. We didn't need all those specifics, so I can have that added if the commissioners.
Well, let me
Consent
look
to
at
it.
it, and I'll let you know between the meetings if that's okay.
Okay.
Thank you. I don't remember what it was for. I have to look. Is that what it was? I can't remember. I just
It was
remember.
for
it, so I'm looking.
demolition? Is that what
The
it was?
Oh, the demolition for the
Right.
rescue squad.
Yeah.
Right. I had asked.
I have them working on the specs.
Right.
Did they
What?
finish the specs?
No, they're not done with the specs yet.
We
so-
can. Yeah. It would just be literally a motion to authorize city clerk to advertise. I would just.
We've done it in the past.
Right.
The minute the specs are done, or when she notices should be all.
I usually just add that information.
Correct. That's what I want to do, because I don't like, if specs are done tomorrow, then I got to wait 3 weeks for the thing to get advertised, and it's just
Yeah.
a waste of everybody's time.
We can add that to the 6:30. Yeah.
You'll make the notice before the,
You doing both buildings or just the one? I'm
well,
just
the one's
curious.
going to be under the bid amount, so we won't need.
Oh, it should be.
Yeah,
Okay.
it should be under demolition
Okay.
cost, should be under 40,000. That one's going to be over
Yeah, it should
40,000.
You're right. It's definitely gonna be under. But I don't know. Does it add in?
What's that?
Be careful of commodities.
Does it add into other? Well, we didn't do any other.
We do all demolitions on the fifth of your unit, doesn't.
There haven't been any more. You'll be all right. But we'll add it. It'll add into the one building.
Say that again.
But it'll add into the. Does it add into the building that he wants to bid for? Or is it separate?
I don't know what the second project is.
The second project's the house on the,
It's on McNeil. It's a little
the
bump.
rescue squad's gonna be over to 40,000, so we can, I mean, you know, we don't add
So
them
do you
all
have
up
to
when we're
bid for
doing
the other house should be $8,000
Right.
to demolish? Right, so if it's 8, does that add into the 40 because they're all demolitions, or are they considered?
That's how we handle it.
Mhm.
So you have to bid that too?
So put them together and bid 'em.
Okay,
Okay.
so I'll do one motion to the city clerk to advertise.
And can't we ask for separate, well, we could ask for them to be bid separately, correct?
Yeah, but it's by, they could
It's
be
by-
actually separately, but it has to be by commodity.
So it adds together.
Okay.
So it has to be bid even though it'll be low, but you can do it on separate bids.
That's why we bid all the demolitions on the fifth floor, because it's the total demolitions over here.
These are city-owned properties though, so it's a little bit different. We don't have to, they're city-owned properties, so that's why the 5th floor is not doing it. Because it's under his,
Fifth floor, we've been advertising all the fifth floor.
no, but I'm saying the other demos weren't
I mean,
city-owned
I
properties, so
understand,
it's
but
his
they're
department.
city-owned.
Yes,
I understand that now.
right?
However you gotta do it so it gets done.
2 bids.
Okay, that's fine. We'll add it to the 6:30.
Anything else, Commissioner Sui?
That's it.
Commissioner Ennis?
Yes, I want to mention 2 things, Mayor. Thank you. Manor Estates, the retention basins, when that development was originally established, the retention basins were deeded over to residents. That decision was later investigated by DEP, and they determined that this municipality does not qualify to have retention basins deeded over to property owners. Sometimes it does happen in certain municipalities, but within this municipality, we cannot do that. It's my suggestion that we allow these residents who have received deeds to retention basins to know that that decision has been reversed, so that that responsibility is no longer on the shoulder of these residents who have deeds for retention basins. Now, maybe that has happened. Maybe that information has already been communicated, but I don't think it has. I've talked to some of the residents who live in Manor Estates, and as far as they know, the responsibility of maintaining these retention basins is on the shoulder and responsibility of the homeowner. Again, DEP determined that we cannot do that. That decision was made under a prior administration to deed that information, deed those properties over, and it was later determined that you can't do that. And we have one gentleman in Manor Estates for 14 years has maintained his own retention basin, and he has done it very well. I think it's very unfair. I think that these kind of things happens, but to continue to put that responsibility upon his shoulders, and it's in writing. As long as it's in writing, this gentleman wants to do the right thing, and as far as he's concerned, he has a deed, a paper, because I explained to him that we're changing things and we're trying to take responsibility of these retention basins, but in his mind, he has a document that says, "Sir, you're responsible. This is your retention basin. You must take care of it." We need to correct that.
Well,
Okay.
just so you know, we have already taken responsibility for retention basins and already had them clean. I mean, we did that. We contracted that out. That was done.
Yeah, I'm aware of that.
So, I mean,
But
tell them
the
to give me a
document-
call and give them my phone number.
No. What I'm saying, Commissioner, prior to this
Well,
administration,
I don't think we can rescind the deed to the land, but we still have the responsibility of taking care of the retention basin.
Yeah, I think the deed is neither here nor there. That under the new stormwater management rules, the city is responsible because the developer was allowed, I think, to escape responsibility. I don't know if he went bankrupt or what happened, but there should have been a continuing responsibility on his part, and that didn't happen. And so the city in that instance is responsible, and the DEP made that clear. And I think we did address one of those ponds.
All of them, we cleaned them all.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we
they-
had equipment out there.
right, they've all been clean, but from a legal perspective, when you have a document that is obligating you to maintain a retention basin, I think the city needs to acknowledge that that has been reversed. People, for the most part, want to do the right thing, and these residents who have this deed that says this is your retention basin, they're still under the assumption that this is my retention basin. I think that if the city's taking responsibility of these retention basins, we need to legally document it and let the residents know you are no longer obligated to maintain this retention basin.
Can we just send the residents a letter that we're maintaining them? Will that suffice for the gentleman?
We can do that, but I think that the deed the commissioner's talking about, I think that deed, unless I'm mistaken, was between the developer and the property owner.
No, it wasn't, Brock. It was something that happened when John Noop was in. And what probably you need to do is go back and do a little research on it. I think this happened. This was a way of taking the responsibility off of the city. And they deeded the deed over to the nearest homeowner. And
You're saying the city transferred the deed to the homeowner?
the city obligated the homeowner who lives next to the retention basin to maintain the retention basin. They gave them.
I think under the previous stormwater regulations, and I'm not certain, but I think under the previous stormwater regulations, the person that owned the property was responsible for the basin. The city didn't own the property, and therefore the person that owned it was the person that got it transferred to them. Now they're still, even though they own it, it's our responsibility. So I don't.
Correct, but there's still a document.
You have to read the
You have
wording
the
in the
document
deed.
you're talking
You have to read the
I
wording
don't
in the
have
deed.
it, but each resident that lives next to the retention basin actually, I mean, we've had people come here in prior years. They've come and taken the mic and taken the podium and explained their concern. So most
Well,
of us
since you have a good contact with them, could you get them to get me a copy of the documents?
Absolutely.
And then we can go from there.
Absolutely.
I'll be happy to look at them too.
Okay. The other thing, Mayor, that I want to acknowledge and address, I think that, as we all know, ignorance of the law is no excuse. However, we live in a community that's integrated with all types of people, all types of educational capacities. And recently, I was looking at, someone brought to my attention about jaywalking. And again, there are people who really don't understand what jaywalking is. They have no clue. You and I may know because we understand, but again, when you look at the culture of Millville, and when you look at, what Millville is comprised of, many times there are people living here who have no idea what jaywalking means. I think it would be in the best interest of the city to educate as much as we can, update your website, post signage wherever it needs to be posted. This way you're teaching and educating and informing people of what to do and what not to do. Because there are many people, again, that I've talked with who have no clue. They really don't understand. They're not used to the word jaywalking. So I think that looking down the road, we need to become more informative and educating people and not take for granted that everybody knows. Because trust me, everybody doesn't know. So I think, so that our law enforcement can do their jobs effectively and do them well, I think we need to help them by making sure that we are educating the residents of this community wherever and whenever we possibly can. I don't know exactly whose department that would fall under. I think, Mayor, that may be something that
Public safety?
Public safety can look into, but I think it would be a great stance for the city to make sure that we are constantly and continuously teaching and educating the people that live in this community.
How do we do that? Educate them on
Signage.
jaywalking?
A lot of times, just having signs that state and
Do not
stipulate.
jaywalk?
Yes, I've seen them in larger cities. There's signs that you have.
With social media, I think, and the police department having a website, Facebook, I think we can start there.
Absolutely.
We can definitely do things like that. We can actually put the ordinance out.
Absolutely.
But
Absolutely.
I think it's something we can accomplish.
That's all for me, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Perry.
Did we finalize the SPCA contract? I'm just curious.
The problem with that is that Sherry Ney is out. You know that.
Oh, she's involved in the contract?
Yes. So I'm just waiting for notes from her, and I'll say this, it's my fault. She did reach out to me, and I haven't reached out to her back. You told me that she was going to be out. She did reach out to me, but I haven't called her back. Well, she took notes. That's the thing. I think everything's going to remain the same, except we added a couple different things that we wanted on there. I'll make sure I'll do that tomorrow. I'll call her tomorrow for sure. I'll take care of it. Okay. She did call me, though.
And then, I guess Commissioner Sui had started a discussion about the Levoy, so we'll go there now.
Sure.
So I guess what happened with the Levoys, this will be a quick summary, is that we gave them a grant of $2 million from the UEZ fund, another loan for $1.6 million. The CCIA loan was another $1 million, and then Chase Bank gave $2 million, and then there was a tax credit of $5 million. On the tax credit for the $5 million, interest was supposed to be being paid. When that was paid, the city was supposed to be recouping their $5 million. The payments were never paid by the Levoy, and now the tax credit is up. So that means that the tax credit entity has come back to the city now, and they want their money. So the Levoy's not in a position to pay it, so they would like the city to pay it. So basically what they're going to do, they've already got all the tax credit benefits that a company gets when they have them, and they've already made that money, but there was interest that was due to the tune of $250,000, $30,000 in fees, $38,000 from an audit, and then they get a percentage of $104,000 for a grand total of $422,000. They decided that the city should pay $250,000 of that. They decided to prorate it down to $192,000, and then they gave us another bargain basement deal of a whopping $96,000. So now the city gets to decide if, after their $12 million investment on the Levoy, if they would like to pay another $96,000. The problems are, one, we pay $96,000. That's the main problem. The other problem is if we don't pay it, the city is in second position on the loans of their $12 million. So the tax credit entity will foreclose to get their money back, so they will own the Levoy then, and the city will lose their $12 million. So in my mind, it's another one of those presents that the previous commission gave us that I don't wish to thank them for. It's a no-win situation in my book because we didn't put in the budget the $96,000. If we don't pay it, we lose $12 million. So I don't know how you win on this deal. It's a decision the commission has to make. I think the public should weigh in. I would like to know what they think. Might give them a chance to vent before we make our decision. The problem is also it has to be made soon. So that was the quick summary.
Thank you.
There is like an August 19th deadline to decide, right?
I think they want it by September. The bottom line is they don't want the Levoy. That's the bottom line. So I really, truly do believe, not that you want this to drag on till eternity, I do believe that if we said we were going to pay him in September, we would. And I know Marcy's going to have to reappropriate money because when you see what we have that would go to surplus because we don't have $96,000 in account laying around, that can't occur until November. So I don't know if we can stall them to November. There was one email that we got that they might be willing to take some payments, so there would be a lesser amount that we might be able to swing if that's the course of action that we decide to take.
So do we become owners after that?
We don't
Only
become
if they
owners,
default.
we would be in first position. So then the Levoy is supposed to be paying us back for all these wonderful things. I don't foresee them doing that. And then at some point, the city's going to have to decide when they're going to foreclose on them. If they miss, they are making, I think, $5,000 a year on the, the $1.6 million loan. So they are making payments on that. That's really nothing towards $1.6 million. That was for equipment, so it's not on the property, so it doesn't help us at all for closing. So go ahead.
No, I'm just going to try to explain it this way. So the bottom line is, and I'm not saying we would foreclose, but the bottom line is that if they did go out, if something happened and they should fail, we need to protect the people that paid for the building, which are the taxpayers of the city. So if they did go out of business, we wouldn't want somebody else to have the $12 million building that the citizens of this city mainly paid for. It's kind of like, say you lent your kid $250,000 to buy a $300,000 house, and he borrowed $50,000 from somebody else and couldn't pay the $50,000 back, and now you're out of $250,000. And the house is gone. So it's kind of like that.
Yeah, it's just to put us in the position where if we ever wanted to take the course of action, we could, or if we had to, or
And
something
they
was
also give
happening.
us some additional leverage as far as getting the actual financials from the Levoy, so we could actually see the books, later on down the road.
So, I don't know how everybody feels about it.
I think it's one of those things where we don't really have a good choice, but we have to make the best choice for the people that paid for the building, which is the taxpayers of Millville.
Of not their own free will, I'd like to add.
Well, we don't have to. But
No, I mean the taxpayers did not of their own free will pay the $12
Well,
million.
that's true.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
Some of them, anyway.
So, thank you, Commissioner Correca Campari. I know we've talked about this a lot over the last 3.5 years. I guess my concern is what stands in the way right now of the city being in the driver's seat, so to speak.
The way the past commission set up the loans. They put the tax credit organization in first position. So we're not in the driving seat. It's the way they did their deals when they did their deals to make sure the project got done.
So if we were to take the first place, we'd probably have to pay these people.
We have to. We don't have any choice. The only way to get into the driver's seat, as you're calling it, is to pay the $96,000. Now, the good news is, in our talks, we got them from $400,000 down to $96,000, but it's still $96,000, which is 10 demos. I mean, you can go down to how many
And then those, another cop, a couple of trucks.
Yeah.
I'm
So-
just looking, I'm sorry, Mayor, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I'm just looking at the future of Millville, and just based on what we see, and trends and certain things. Personally, I think it would be better for us to pay the $96,000 and take over, because that's my personal position. I think we would be in a better position, even though it's going to cost us $96,000. But as you said, $96,000 is certainly far away from prior $400,000 or whatever it was.
Well, then you have to make the next decision, logically. Does the city want to be in the theater business, or then are you going to turn around and try to sell it? Because owning the Levoy, you own the expenses of the Levoy also.
Right.
So, electric.
Well, it's
you know,
not necessarily
blah, blah,
that we have to put them out of business if we do this. They can
No,
still
no.
operate, so.
blah. Right, but I'm just saying, but any repairs to the building, the city
Only
would
if
then-
we foreclose, right?
No, oh, I see
Yeah.
what you're
If we
saying.
don't
You're saying-
foreclose,
Right.
we're fine.
Just paying the $96,000 wouldn't require us
Got it.
to assume
No,
responsibility
I'm saying,
for
but
their
he
debt.
said, he added the sentence, I think we should take over. So if we take over and own the building and follow, have to follow through in the next step, then we also get all the expenses of running a theater.
Right. So, Brock, couldn't we be in ownership yet have the current operators maintain and operate it?
Well, then it'd be kind of
Well, you
pointless
could,
to.
well, you could make an agreement to that effect in lieu of foreclosure. In other words, they could give us a deed. I mean, if you got the first position, you have to do that first. They could give us, if they wanted to, a deed in lieu of foreclosure, and then we could have some kind of an agreement and allow them to continue to operate.
Right, because I just don't want to see the taxpayers of the city get stuck. And I don't know, to me, it seems if we stay on this journey we're on, there's a very possibility that could happen. And I don't think it's fair to people, personally.
None of it's fair. That's the bottom line. So that's that discussion.
There's no good being closed, I heard that.
No,
absolutely
correct.
not.
Good being
Absolutely not. You're absolutely correct
Correct.
about that.
There's no good being
So should we get that on for the next agenda then?
But yeah, something has to change
Well,
though, so
maybe-
that they can start making an effort to do the things that they promised when they took out these loans and start paying them. Unfortunately. Next. The other issue, which is on here, is when we looked into the grants and the HUD investigation started, we also went through and looked at what contractors pulled permits and which contractors did, and there's a definite pattern to it. And I didn't know what the commission would like to do about the contractors that did not pull permits for the grants. There's some money involved. It's not a lot of money. We have to go back to the old permit fee schedule at that time. It's roughly around $10,000 in permits. There may or may not be fines involved. The other course of action is to not allow the contractors that did not pull the permits to do any grant work for the city anymore. They knew they had to pull the permits. It was in the contract they signed with the city. When they got the grant money, they got paid for the work that supposedly was done, but they just chose not to pull the permits.
Has that information been forwarded to the authorities?
I believe so. As part of the investigation, yes.
So
Yes.
when you say 10,000, how many of those contractors are involved? Is it just 10,000, the total fee, or is it 10,000 per
I
contractor?
can't, it was no, total fee.
So how many contractors are involved? Is it one, is it two, is it three? Because then we would kind of compare that to legal fees if we went after them.
Of course, they would probably rather
You're
pay
counting
it.
them all right there? It's over 10.
And Mayor, actually, I think
18.
18 of them.
Now, but there's a pattern. Like some only didn't pull one permit.
Okay.
Others didn't pull 10 to 20 permits. So there's a definite pattern. So the ones that didn't pull the 10 to 20 are really 3 or 4 contractors.
Did the grant money actually pay for those permits?
No permits were pulled.
No, but I mean, if it was used
Yes.
properly. So in other words, the grant money was enough to cover those permits.
They would add the $50 onto the grant.
So they just walked away with free permits.
Well, but the result of that, though, it's more than just the permit fee. The result is, one, we don't know if the heater was ever put in Mrs. Jones's house. That's number one. Number two, you don't know if Mrs. Jones's heater was put in correctly. Because we're getting when I was up there, we were getting phone calls from individuals that the roof still leaked, or the heater never worked, or the septic system never passed the health department, and it goes on, because they didn't go out and inspect and they didn't do their jobs. And the person that was in charge of the inspections was the one that was doling out the grants. So there's no excuse. It was negligence, in my opinion. So the choice now is, what do you want to do about the contractors? I'm too close to it. I'm really biased on this, so I didn't want to make the decision on my own. I wanted an opinion from everyone, how they wanted to proceed.
Rock, you were going to say
What I
something.
was going to say is that it could be handled by way of a summons and complaint in municipal court rather than a superior court lawsuit. So there wouldn't necessarily be any attorney's fees, although if there's an appeal, I understand the appeal from the municipal court would be to the Board of Construction Appeals. So there might be some attorney's fees if we had to go there, but it would go to municipal court first. Or you could bring an action, I think, in Superior Court. I think you can go either way.
So what you're saying is the first step is maybe to send these people letters from the city and informing them of what actions we can take?
I think you could actually send them like we would with a code matter, a notice of violation
Right.
in order to comply.
First step.
And then if they don't satisfy that,
Right.
then a summons and complaint to court.
Makes sense.
I mean, it's grant money that they got. You know, this could be elevated to a higher complaint, I think.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
So what do you, I'm okay with going either way. I mean, what are you saying?
I think they should be advised of what we know and what they did, and if they don't comply, this is what may happen.
So if they don't pay the permit fees, is that what you're saying then?
Well, there would technically, what should happen is, and this is anytime somebody does work without a permit, when they're required to get a construction permit, technically they'd have to pay the permit fee, and then there would have to be an inspection. And then what can complicate things is, if it's 5 years old, for example, you know, how do you inspect something that's 5 years old? I mean, it might be difficult, because, you know, you're trying to, but, you know, it's supposed to pass the inspection, it's supposed to be up to code. So I guess you could go out and inspect it and make sure that they've complied with code. As a safety issue, if something wasn't installed properly, you know, it could be a fire hazard. You know, that's why you have
Well, the right thing to do is
subcode.
to hold them accountable for
Yeah.
what money they got
Yeah.
and what they didn't pay for.
I mean, if there was an electrical or plumbing work, there should be a subcode inspector to make sure that that was done in a safe way.
So I guess then you would write a letter to them?
Well, I think the construction code officer, I mean, I can talk with her, but she would be issuing, I would think, some type of a letter. I would think it'd be in the nature of a notice of violation in order to
Okay.
comply.
All right. So I'll turn this back over to her then.
I can talk to her.
Okay. So I can give you my pile, so I
The
can get rid of
evidence
a
is there,
pile?
That's a lot.
Anything else, Commissioner?
That's all, thank you.
Progress with me also. New business, please.
Okay, we have retiree delinquent health insurance premiums discussion.
If I can maybe talk about the status of that. We had a list of retirees that hadn't been or former employees that hadn't been paying their health insurance premiums, which they're required to do under their various contracts. And it wasn't just one union, it was several unions. And what we did was, before we filed suit, we wrote letters, and we were fairly successful. I think there were only two that actually, by the time we got around filing the suit, which we did file, there was either one or two that had not complied. So the other, I think it may have been 7 or 8
Just
did.
one, yeah,
And there's
everybody
only
else complied.
one that's,
There's only one long-term, but we now have people who complied that are now
Well,
6
now
months
they're-
without paying again.
now
But
they're in
hadn't,
arrears.
but hadn't paid.
They paid
complied,
up, and now they're
not
6
paying.
months again.
Okay.
And, maybe what I could do, if you wanted me to, would be to advise them that there's a suit that's already been filed. And if they don't catch up within a certain amount of time, we'll just amend the complaint and add them. And I think that they'll probably pay if we do it. Now, I can't,
I would say the ones that, again, would pay. The one individual that we have that's, it's got to be 4 or 5 years because she owes quite a bit.
yeah.
My concern is, do we get to a point where we cancel their coverage?
Well, I
Most
think-
COBRA situations, if you don't pay within 60 days, you're canceled. Like, do we continue to pay it? I mean, a retiree who's not on Medicare yet that has family coverage is costing the city over $30,000 a year. It's close to 35, if I'm correct. And they pay $1,000. The older retirees pay $1,000 towards that 35,000. We're not getting the $1,000. Like, at what point?
The suit, one of the things, and this is because we got an opinion from Labor Council, before we started this, must have been a couple of years ago, is that in the lawsuit, one of the things you're asking for is you're asking the judge to enter an order or judgment allowing us to cancel that policy. So that's where we would be going with the lawsuit. Rather than doing that without getting the approval of the court, I think there was a concern about that.
Well, and then how many, though, chances do you give someone that doesn't pay each time, right?
I don't know if in the future we want to put some kind of policy when they retire that basically says after 60 days, you'll receive a notice from us, I mean, if you want to do it by certified mail or whatever, and then we have a right to cancel your policy. I mean,
Would that have to be in,
decision of the court, the commission will
Right.
decide that, but nothing like
Well,
that is in place.
would that have to be in the specific constructive bargaining agreement?
Now's the time to put that in the agreements.
Yeah.
I should do.
Because it's not in there, it's not in the agreement. So
Yeah, if you could, yeah,
Add that. Right, add that. too.
absolutely.
So Regina, I just want to make sure I'm understanding you correctly. You certainly don't want to impose a hardship on anyone unnecessarily or unwarranted. I know I don't. However, I'm hearing you correctly that there's someone that's retired that has not contributed their portion for 5 years, and their insurance is still in coverage. So who's paying for that?
City.
we are.
Well, the city,
Taxpayers.
the portion is only $1,000, it's like we're looking for $1,000 per year.
And again, what I heard was that there's no policy in place.
It always has been an unwritten policy that
Right.
we do not cancel retirees' insurance. That's
It's an unwritten policy.
there's nowhere it's written.
See, these are the things, ladies and gentlemen, that can haunt you. And I've heard it repetitiously, over and over and over, in every situation. No policy, no policy, no policy. And this is something that I think is, it really, we got to get this corrected, because when you don't have a written document, a written statement, most of you have worked in the real world, so to speak. We're in municipal government. Most of you work, in the corporate world. I know I have, and everything is documented. Everything. Bill, you work for the prison system. Everything is documented. Everything is documented. There's paperwork. I'm just saying.
Well, 95% of the procedures documented, this is a piece that's
The,
missing.
the problem is there's a provision in the CBA, the collective bargaining agreement, that says that we will provide this insurance. It doesn't say what we will do if they don't make their contribution. That's the point of going to court and getting the judge to say, okay, you can terminate their coverage.
There's only one person.
So we don't have a policy because it was never addressed before.
And when these
So we can't make a policy that supersedes a contract anyway.
Exactly. But
and
now
when
that-
these agreements were made, health insurance didn't cost as much as it does now. Times have changed.
And I don't know the person. I don't want to know. I really don't. And I don't know what their situation may be. At the same time, though, I think to sustain a person's coverage for 5 years at the burden of the taxpayer, I don't think that's fair. You know, that's my personal opinion. So that's where I stand with that, Regina. Thank you, Regina.
So then what's going to happen, Brock, you're going to proceed adding the other people to the lawsuit,
Yeah,
and you'll send a letter to them?
yes, I will.
And if it doesn't get resolved, then it goes court, and you're going to put it in the collective bargaining? Or attempt to
for fact finding, so I'll attempt to.
add that to them?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, second item under new business is we received a citizen leadership form from Sheila Rosell, and the reason I added this was because she had indicated her interest in both the planning board and the zoning board, and the zoning board, after looking, has a greater need for members. So the planning board is a mayor's appointment, but the zoning board was changed to the full commission's appointment, so I figured this would be a good place to discuss it.
Because what the zoning board needs two
The zo-
members?
I have no
exactly.
problem
The
with that.
zoning board needs two, like, full-time members, where the planning board only needs two alternate members.
Oh, they're missing
So-
two full-time on the
Yes.
plan?
That-
Oh, the
that's
zoning, so it has
correct.
to go on the.
So,
So,
Right.
has to go on zoning.
Because the zoning, they have some alternates though, don't they?
I don't think so.
Because I thought
I
that
have to
Tim
look-
Carty was an alternate. I have in my head.
I'll double check
He
my.
was.
But then he
what
would
my-
move up, I guess, to a full member, and this person would go in. Because normally, in the past, what we were doing is whoever the alternate was moved up,
I think
because
that-
they
yeah,
paid their
that's
dues.
typically how they do it, but I'll have to look into their alternate situation.
I'm
I
pretty
just
sure he
know-
was appointed as an alternate.
Okay.
So when people are placed in these positions, right? I'm just
Mhm.
asking some, you know, is there any requirements?
I sent her all her information. I can't put it public because it
I
has
understand,
personal
but
information
there
on
are
it.
What's your email?
But she had her pretty much all her experience
Okay.
attached to it, and
And they have to go to school, too. They have to go to a class.
right for
Wonderful.
land use.
Wonderful.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So you're not just throwing
Yeah.
somebody in a position. Okay.
She would be fine on either of those boards, I know her.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, okay.
I
Commissioner
agree.
Dave, do you have a preference, what you do? That's your department. I know.
If there's a bigger need on the zoning board, we might as well go there.
Exactly.
Very
I think we
good.
have like 9
The boards
seats on
function, they hear similar types of cases, so it wouldn't really make a big difference whether they went to zoning rather than planning.
Okay, so we can add a resolution at the next meeting to appoint her. Is that at August 1st meeting? I'll reach out to her and let her know that.
Yeah, and then just check if because you'll have to add two, because if you're going to move the alternates up to a position, you would
Mhm.
have to have that on there also.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep, that's all I have for new business.
All right, we've reached the public comment portion of our meeting. Anyone who would like to address the commission, please go to the podium, state your name, and address your concerns, and please limit your comments to approximately 5 minutes. Seeing no one, I close the public comment portion of this meeting, work session. Comments of commissioners? Commissioner Davis?
Not this time, Mayor.
Commissioner Sui?
Nothing at this time.
Commissioner Ennis?
Nothing?
Commissioner Perec-Compari?
Progress.
Myself, progress. Have a motion to
Move
adjourn?
Second?
Second? This meeting is adjourned. Thank you for